Everybody for inviting me back today as well. It's always nice to get a repeat visit. I'm going to talk a bit about some of the work we've been doing around trust and confidence, also the work we've been doing to try and support the sector and the red tape work, and I'll pick up some of the issues that we're coming across from our day-to-day work with charities as I go through as well. When I spoke to you last year, I talked a bit about the elephant in the room, which was the uncertainty about the ACNC and the future of the ACNC, and things haven't really shifted a tremendous amount since then. I was hoping I'd come today and I'd be able to give you some breaking announcement, but sadly I'm not in that situation. So the repeal bill to repeal the ACNC has been sitting in the House of Representatives now for nearly 2 years. The standings certainly that we've had from Minister Scott Morrison and also from the current Minister for Social Services, Christian Porter, have been warm and positive towards the ACNC, and we are waiting to see really what the government's settled position is. The ACNC Advisory Board, their terms actually came to an end on the 14th of February this year, and their terms have been extended by the Treasurer for a further 3 months, whilst the government looks at longer term positions. So we're expecting that there will be an announcement shortly, but we don't know yet when that will be. So in the meantime, we just continue with the work that we've been doing. A lot of work is really about the Registry of Charities, which is really at the heart of the system of regulation. So it's about actually ensuring that the public have got access to unparalleled levels of transparency about the sector, and that they can find out information and make informed decisions, but also really so that the public can have some confidence that if they give to a charity that's on the register, such as many of your organisations in the room today, that they can give with confidence. And really the message we want to give to the public is to give generously to charities and to support registered charities because of the regulatory oversight that they have. And certainly there's a lot of work that we do throughout the year. We've just been doing some media really around the terrible cyclone in Fiji, again encouraging the public to give and encouraging the public to use the register and to give to organisations on the register. We've now got an awful lot of information that's on there through the information that charities have been providing. So we've got nearly 117,000 annual information statements where charities have really set out precisely what they're doing, what their governance arrangements are. We have the governing rules now of nearly 44,000 charities in Australia. So for the first time, you as an organisation can go and actually look at other organisations, professional advisors can actually find the governing rules of organisations that they may be helping or seeking to advise, rather than actually people going through their drawers or trying to find this sort of information. We've got a lot of sets of accounts on there as well, so all the medium and large charities have to file their financial reports, and you can see we've already published over 30,000 financial reports. So as a database for the public, for the sector, for advisors and others, we think it actually gives a high level of transparency around the governance and financial arrangements of organisations. One of the issues that's been bubbling around for a while, certainly over the last year, and we often get it when we go and speak at events, is are there too many charities? And certainly the Reverend Tim Costello and others have been talking a lot about rationalisation in the sector, encouraging organisations to collaborate but also to merge. The ACNC's position with regard to this is we think that it is a fundamental part of freedom of association for individuals to be able to come together and form charities or form not-for-profits. It isn't the role of federal government to say that they can't, but we think that we do have a legitimate role, certainly when people are approaching us or considering setting up a charity, to actually identify what other organisations are out there and to identify other routes that they may wish to follow. So, for example, we now will very explicitly say to individuals that they can actually gift money to existing charities, they can set up special accounts, they can set up sub-funds with community foundations, We will actively tell people about the other charities working in that field, and particularly in that locality as well, and encourage them to take a look at that before they actually go ahead and actually set up a new charity. We all know that people set up charities because they want to do something positive and they have a passion, and we want to channel and encourage that passion. We don't want to discourage it because it's really at the heart of civil society. But at the same time, just because you have that passion doesn't mean that you necessarily have the skills, experience, understanding, and often resilience to be able to actually run a successful organisation moving forward. And of course, we see cricket players and others setting up charities who may be very good in their own field, but they may not be really experts in terms of running an organisation long term. So we think we do have certainly a role in terms of that sort of engagement. So we don't just register organisations without actually at least going through that process with them. We've now registered over 8,000 charities, but we've actually revoked over 13,000. So the register is declining and will continue to decline over the coming year. And that's largely really as we take out dormant organisations. We know from our experience over the last 3 years, but also experience overseas, that many small organisations will be established each year and many will fold. And really what we're interested in is actually looking at how many of the organisations we're registering actually never get off the ground. Why do some organisations thrive and grow, and why do some, fold quite quickly? What's the issues there? If we're looking at the sustainability of the sector, then we think that that's important. But we believe that at the moment about as many wind up each year as actually get established. The way that the registry is populated is through the annual information statements that charities provide. And what we found is that most organisations, most charities are willingly providing the information. Some need quite a few reminders. Some need lots of reminders and then a few sticks really before people actually get around to doing it. But on the whole, we found that the sector is largely pretty compliant. So when we look at the first year of reporting, bearing in mind whole thing new, people thinking, who the hell is these people contacting us? Why have we got to do another form? And haven't they been abolished? We actually got 99% of submissions in 2013. 2014, the first year with financial reports, we got 93% in so far, and they're still trickling in. And the current financial year, of the charities that should have filed by the 31st of January, at the moment about 71% have filed. So on any basis, it's not a bad compliance rate. We actually haven't issued any fines yet. But the process we have been going through is that if organisations haven't filed 2 years, after repeated reminders, requests, after us putting red marks on the register, then we go through a process of revoking them. And we are actually in the process at the moment where we have 2,100 charities who we've issued a notice of intention to revoke, and that expires on the 17th of March. So if you have the time or inclination or interest, we have put on the register, on the website, a list of those organisations. We don't want to revoke any of these charities if they are active and delivering services in the community. But at the end of the day, having had 8 reminders and contacts, having been phoned and reminded, if people won't comply with the regulations, then they will lose their tax concessions. So we're trying to, even at this late hour, publicise and try and get organisations to file. And we've had many over the last few days, dozens and dozens over the last few days, who, now they've got the notice, are actually happy to provide the information. So sometimes you have to issue a disconnection notice before people will ultimately pay, and that's certainly what we're finding with a minority of charities. What we've also found, particularly from last year's financial information reports that were provided, was a lot of errors. So charities are making a lot of errors in terms of particularly in terms of the provision of financial information in the annual information statements. So out of 54,000 returns, we found errors in 7,000 of those. So we have actually gone through and we've gone back to all those charities to ask them to correct the error. We've identified what it is. Now, some of these are rounding errors, some of these are addition errors, some of these are people misunderstanding terms, and where we've got certainly a number of issues with that, then we're reviewing the guidance and we're testing the guidance out with people. So what we actually found through that work was $10 billion of revenue that hadn't been reported. So it's a pretty major error rate. But we thought if we're putting this information out on the register and we're saying to the public and the community they can trust it, and actually if we're undertaking research on this, then we've got to make sure that it's right. We can't just take it all at face value. So 95% of the errors that we've identified have been rectified, and we're working with the remaining charities to do that. We have some charities, including 30 very large charities, that despite about 8 contacts have still failed to rectify the errors. If they don't, then we will be exercising penalties for the first time in respect of those. What we've also identified is that a lot of charities are declaring themselves basic religious charities. Now, basic religious charity is a particular definition in the ACNC Act. It really provides unincorporated religious organisations, largely congregations, that don't have deductible gift recipient status, don't receive over $100,000 a year in government grants, to have certain exemptions, and they're exempt from the governance standards and they're exempt from providing financial information. And that was part of the deal that was done to get the legislation through back in 2012. But what we've uncovered is initially we found 550 organisations that clearly have a corporate structure and can't be basic religious charities, and we've got a number of others that don't meet other criteria. So we're undertaking a program at the moment of contacting all of those. So just to give you a heads up, particularly if any of you are part of religious groupings or religious organisations or advisors, that we're working with all the church leaders and denominations. We've already been working with them now for a number of weeks on this, but we will be contacting individual organisations, and if they don't meet the criteria, they'll have to go back and provide the financial information that's missing. In terms of the data, we think that this is a valuable data resource. So what we say to charities, it's not that you're providing information to us. If you provide it to us, we publish it. We're only asking for information that we need for our regulatory purposes, and this is publicly available, unless there's certain exceptional circumstances such as commercial confidentiality or things like women's refuges where you need to keep certain data protected. But really what we want to do is not just publish the data, but actually put the data back out to the sector in a way that's useful to you. And so very much part of this has been really about trying to get data that we've never had in Australia on charities. Now, we've had ABS data, but that's sampled and extrapolated in some areas. Some of it's very good, some of it's a bit more dodgy. But here what we've got is really census type verified data that you as charities have been providing, that we've done some assurance and checking on, and that can now be used and can be analysed. And this is important because we share this data, the publicly available data, with other government agencies, both at a federal level and increasingly at a state level, through the Charity Passport. Now, some of you will be aware, but others may not, that we've commissioned the Centre for Social Impact in the University of New South Wales to actually analyse the data. And there's some reports that we've produced, and there's other reports coming out. So we produced a main report on Australian charities with an analysis of the financial data that we had at that point in time, a report on the disability sector. We'll be issuing a report on the red tape information that charities have provided in the annual information statement later this month. And in April there's a report that's coming out on international charities, charities working overseas. But if you take nothing else away from what I've talked about today, what I would ask you to do is to have a look at the data cube. So if you go to our website and you'll see a reference to the charity data or to the report, or you go to australiancharities.acnc.gov.au, you get the data cube. So not only is there on there the reports, but actually what UNSW have done using Tableau software is actually provide the data set in quite an interactive way. So you can, for example, drill down on the map of Australia. You can see every single dot is a charity. You hover over the dot, you can see the organisation, you can see its ABN, you can see its assets, its income, its expenditure, and you can click through to where you can find further information. You've got the breakdown of the financials and breakdown of staff and volunteers and other information on there, where organisations are operating, who they help, what their charitable purpose is, and you can sift that according to various criteria. So you can look at disability charities in New South Wales, and you can look at really what the data shows you there. You can look at any of those different cross-sections. So I would encourage you, if you haven't had a look, to take a look. This is going to be further populated at the end of March, where we're putting the next 8,000 annual information statements as they come in. So this will be a live database. As we get all the returns in, this will be populated with all the returns, and it will be populated year on year. So you'll be able to then see what's actually happening in particular sectors, in particular states, year on year, and you can pull this data down into Excel spreadsheets and use it in various ways. So obviously it's helpful for researchers, but we think it can be helpful for charities as well, particularly in conversations with government and others, and other funders. What we do know from the data, some of the headlines, we have a bit of a sense now as to what really the breakdown of the sector is. I think what's interesting is you can see that 31.5% of charities actually have revenue of less than 50,000. So there are an awful lot of really, really very small organisations, probably employing no staff, probably entirely volunteer-led. And you can see that the largest 5% of charities receive 80% of the sector's income. They also employ 80% of the sector's workers as well, and the volunteer number, interestingly, largely corresponds with that as well. So there's a lot of data that's available through that, which I think is of interest. In terms of some of the financial information that we've got there, you can see that, and this is based on 38,000, just under 38,000 returns. So as the rest go on and come through, this will increase. So all of this is an underestimate. But of the data that we've got, we can see that government, both state and federal government, give $42 billion to charities. Most of that is through the provision of services, as you'd imagine. Donations and bequests that are reported, $6.8 billion. So what we've had in the past is we've had data that comes through the ATO's tax returns, the tax returns that people file, particularly when they're giving money to DGR charities and they're declaring it. But we've always known that that's not all charities, and we've always known that that's an underestimate as well, because people don't always disclose everything that really goes through. So for the first time, we've got some of this sort of data. You can see that other income and revenue will be broken down more this year, but it will include obviously investment income and other things, but a lot of that will also be trading income and self-generated income, and what we're interested to do is to be able to better pull that out and really analyse what's happening. You know, particularly as we see really exciting social enterprise models coming up, you know, what does the data actually tell us with regard to that, other than just the stories that we all have? A lot of work we've been doing around education, guidance and support, you know, which is a key part really of our approach. We put much more effort into the education, guidance and support than we do really to the pointy end of compliance, although we're doing more work in that area now as well. Some recent guides we put out, a guide on conflicts of interest, managing conflicts of interest, because we're seeing lots of problems with conflicts of interest not being properly managed, inevitably, and also managing charity money, charity finance. but we're working on other things that are coming through. So where we see issues that are common issues in our compliance work, and then we're looking to either promote materials that are already available that address that, or if we think there is a gap where we could usefully do something, then we're looking to develop materials. But we're not looking to replicate what's already done. So there's some really good work that Moores Legal have been doing with our community. They've produced some really good guides. There's damn good guides, they're calling them, and some certainly on finances, and guides for treasurers are really excellent. So we're not looking to repeat that, but we're happy to promote that. And there is a toolkit that I've been promoting, and the Commission has been promoting, on child protection, which is of course incredibly important. And in terms of board responsibilities and governance, then we only need to look at the papers from one day to the next to see what happens when you have poor governance in place, as well as very bad people. So we're trying to promote other materials like that as and when we see those. We run free webinars, which we're doing on a monthly basis. Some of these at the moment are quite basic, but we're looking to do more advanced webinars as we move forward. We're certainly doing a popular one, which is welcome to the board. So if any of you have new board members coming up, we gear it largely towards medium to small end of town. So it should be understandable by anybody, but it may only be a starting point if you're a large organisation. But we've got one of those coming up. We run one regularly for new charities as well, and there's a whole range of other ones that we've got in the pipeline. I just thought I'd give you a heads up on a few things that we're looking at, and this is partially because of issues that we're seeing. So still a lot of confusion really around the rules and what is a public benevolent institution. We had a case last year called the Hunger Project, which did, I think, redefine and probably expand a bit the definition of a public benevolent institution. Certainly it clarifies that under certain circumstances the charity itself didn't have to be delivering the benevolent relief in order for it to be a PBI. But we still think there's quite a lot of confusion. So we've got a draft Commissioner interpretation statement on that we'll be issuing probably in the next couple of weeks for consultation, and we'd really welcome any thoughts, any feedback from you with regard to that. We're starting to see some issues with political advocacy.